They told him never to do it. Every Sherpa, every climber, every soul who had ever faced the mountain whispered the same warning. Dawn to disturb the dead. But Adrian Blackwell didn't listen. When the sun rose over the frozen slopes of Everest that morning, a lone figure stood above Camp 4. A 38-year-old British climber, weathered by years of failed summits and haunted dreams. Adrian wasn't chasing glory anymore. He was chasing redemption. 10 years ago, the mountain had taken his brother, left him entombed in ice, eyes wide open, as if still watching the heavens. And Adrian had sworn that one day he'd bring him home, no matter the cost. So when the Sherpa beside him begged, "Please, Mr. Blackwell, this is a cursed path," he simply whispered, "I've already lost one brother to this mountain. I won't lose him again." What he didn't know was that by breaking Everest as his oldest taboo, disturbing the resting dead, he was about to cross a line no climber should ever cross. The mountain remembers, and this time, it would not forgive. Ben Stories, real emotions from the world's highest graveyard. Subscribe to stay for what happened next. The wind at Camp 4 screamed like a living thing. It clawed at the tents, tore at the ropes, and howled across the death zone, where every breath was borrowed time. Adrian Blackwell sat alone inside his tent, staring at the frozen photograph in his hands. Two brothers standing in snow, smiling at a summit that wasn't Everest. That was years ago, before everything fell apart, before his brother Thomas disappeared above 8,600 meters, never to come down. Outside, his Sherpa team murmured prayers in the flickering glow of their headlamps. They knew what Adrian planned. Everyone did. The route he wanted to take, the North Ridge, the graveyard path, was forbidden. Too many bodies, too much death, too much history that should stay buried. But Adrian didn't care about history. He cared about blood. He zipped up his jacket, stepped into the night, and whispered to himself, "I'm coming for you, Thomas." The climb began in the dim blue light before dawn. Ice cracked underfoot, like bones snapping. His breath fogged the inside of his mask. The oxygen hissed, a sound that became a rhythm, like the ticking of time counting down. His Sherpa, Dorje, followed close behind. Dorje was only 30, but his eyes were ancient, eyes that had seen too many men go up and never come back. "Sir," Dorje called through the radio, his voice trembling in the static. "Wind rising. We should turn." Adrian didn't reply. His boots crunched deeper into the ridge, every step slower, heavier. The higher he went, the quieter the world became, until it felt like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Then he saw it, a shape frozen into the ice. Human. Blue downsuit, shredded by time. A glove still clinging to a rock. Thomas, or what was left of him. Adrian's knees buckled. He stumbled forward, tears freezing on his face. He dropped to his hands and brushed away the frost from the name tag. Thomas Blackwell. He laughed, a sharp, broken sound that echoed across the empty ridge. "I found you, brother. I found you." Dorje caught up seconds later, gasping. "Sir, no, no touch. Bad spirit, very bad omen." Adrian ignored him. He began chipping at the ice with his axe, desperate, reckless. Shards of frost flew into the air like shattered glass. The metal struck something hard. Bone. Dorje grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. This is cursed. No one touches the dead on the mountain." Adrian's voice broke. "He's not the dead. He's my brother." And with that, he tore the mask from Thomas's frozen face, eyes still open, staring into eternity. For a moment, Adrian thought he saw the pupils move. Just the wind, he told himself. Just the wind. By the time they began descending to Camp 4, night was already crawling up the slope. Clouds swallowed the last of the light. Dorje refused to speak. His lips moved silently in prayer. But Adrian, he heard something else. A whisper. Not through the radio. Not from Dorje. From behind him. "Why did you come back?" He froze. Turned around. Nothing but blowing snow. "Dorje," he called out. No answer. The storm hit them an hour later. Sudden, violent, blinding. Their rope line snapped. Doria vanished in the whiteout, his cries drowned by the wind. Adrian stumbled alone through the dark, dragging the bundle that held his brother's remains, screaming his name into nothing. For 6 hours, he fought through the storm until he collapsed near a half-buried body marker. An old corpse, green boots poking through the snow. He realized in horror that he was standing near Green Boots Cave, the landmark of death. And then, through the storm, he heard it again, clearer this time. "You shouldn't have come, Adrian." The voice came from behind him. The same tone, the same cadence, the same voice he hadn't heard in 10 years. His brother's voice. Adrian dropped to his knees, gasping for air. His oxygen gauge flickered red. Panic set in. He fumbled for his radio. "Dorje, Dorje, do you copy?" Only static, and then faintly, laughter. Not from Dorje. From somewhere close. He turned his headlamp toward the ridge and saw a figure standing in the storm. A man in a blue downsuit. Face pale, frozen, eyes open. Thomas. Adrian blinked, and the figure was gone. Only snow. Only silence. The mountain had gone quiet again. Too quiet. And that's when he realized the taboo wasn't just superstition. It was a warning. When Adrian woke, everything was white. Snow had swallowed the world. His body was half buried, his oxygen mask cracked, his fingers stiff and blue. For a moment, he didn't know where he was, until the wind screamed again, and he remembered. Everest, the death zone. And Thomas. The bundle beside him was gone. Panic struck like lightning. He tore off his gloves and clawed at the snow, searching, digging until his nails bled. Nothing. Not even the rope that had tied it to his harness. His brother's remains had vanished. He pressed his radio to his mouth, voice trembling. "Dorje, do you read me?" Static. Then a faint, broken sound. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Then a whisper. "You left me here." Adrian froze. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He twisted the dial, shouting, "Who is this? Dorje, answer me!" But the voice only repeated, quieter, closer. "You left me here." He ripped the radio off his chest and hurled it into the snow. It disappeared instantly, swallowed by white silence. By late afternoon, he spotted movement below the ridge, a flicker of orange. A tent. He staggered toward it, half crawling, half sliding. When he reached it, he ripped open the flap. Empty. Just a torn sleeping bag, frostbite medicine, and an oxygen tank long out of air. But something was carved into the inside of the tent wall, scratched into the nylon with a knife. "Don't take them." The words made no sense. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked halfway. He pressed his forehead against the frozen tent wall and whispered, "I'm not taking anyone. I'm bringing him home." Outside, the wind shifted. It wasn't howling anymore. It sounded like breathing, slow, rhythmic, too close. Adrian turned slowly. A shape stood a few meters away, a climber, motionless, headlamp flickering. "Dorje." The figure didn't answer. It tilted its head slightly as though studying him. Then, without a word, it stepped backward and vanished into the white fog. Adrian stumbled after it, dragging his ice axe for balance. He followed the faint tracks in the snow, until he realized they weren't footprints. They were bare feet, and they led straight toward the cliff. He stopped. The realization hit like a punch to the chest. He was alone. He had been following nothing, or worse, something that wanted him to follow. He backed away, every nerve screaming to turn around, to descend, to survive. But then he saw it again. The bundle. His brother's remains, lying perfectly still on the edge of the ridge, as if gently placed there. Thomas. He took a step closer. The body twitched. Adrian froze. His mouth went dry. Then, slowly, the head turned toward him, eyes open, icy lips moving. "You shouldn't have come." Adrian stumbled backward, his scream lost in the wind. His crampons slipped, his knees smashed against rock. He tried to crawl, but the snow beneath him seemed to shift, pulling him down, as if the mountain itself was alive. He reached out, His glove brushed the frozen hand of his brother, and for a split second, he swore he felt it grip back. Darkness. When he woke again, he was back in his tent. He didn't remember getting there. His body ached, his face was frostbitten, and his oxygen tank was full again, even though he remembered it being empty. Dorya sat by the tent door, head bowed, whispering to himself. Relief flooded through Adrian. "Dorya, thank God. I thought you—" Dorya raised his face. His eyes were pale, rimmed with frost. He smiled. Too wide. Too wrong. "You shouldn't have touched him, Mr. Blackwell." Adrian's breath caught. "Dorya!" The figure tilted its head again, just like the one he'd seen in the storm. Then, before Adrian could move, it dissolved, the body collapsing into snow. No footprints, no trace. Adrian stumbled outside, screaming his name into the night. But the only answer was the wind, whispering a single word that chased him down the slope. Home. He didn't stop running until he reached the edge of the Hillary step, the final obstacle between him and descent. His flashlight flickered over the drop, and for the first time, he saw how small he really was. One man against a god made of ice and stone. He dropped to his knees and whispered, "What do you want from me?" And from somewhere in the storm, the mountains seemed to whisper back, "You took one who belongs to me." Then silence. That night, Adrian sat alone under a sky so clear it hurt to look at, stars like cold fire. The summit gleamed above, close enough to touch but farther than ever. He realized for the first time that he wasn't climbing anymore. He was being pulled. And deep inside, a thought began to form. Quiet, poisonous, irresistible. Maybe the only way to bring him home is to stay. The summit was close, barely 100 vertical meters, yet each step felt like dragging a corpse uphill. The air was razor thin, slicing through his throat with every gasp. His oxygen tank was nearly empty again, though he could have sworn he'd changed it hours ago. Adrian Blackwell moved in slow, trembling rhythm. Ice axe, step, breathe. Ice axe, step, breathe. The wind had died, leaving behind a silence that pressed against his eardrums. It was the kind of silence that didn't belong to the living. He passed a tattered flag fluttering weakly from an old pole, a relic of an expedition long gone. Next to it, half buried in snow, another climber sat frozen in eternal rest, his eyes glazed over, his face covered in frost. Adrian didn't look away, not anymore. They were all here, climbers from every decade, staring up toward a peak that had taken their lives. The mountain was a museum of unfinished dreams, and he was about to become another exhibit. Still, he kept moving. His brother's voice echoed in his mind, pulling him higher. "You promised you'd bring me home, Adrian." The guilt drove him harder than oxygen ever could. At 8,848 meters, the world ended. He stepped onto the summit, the roof of the planet, and the horizon unfolded beneath him, oceans of cloud drifting below. The sky was too blue, too clean. It felt wrong, like standing in the afterlife. Adrian fell to his knees. He took off his glove and reached into his jacket, pulling out the only piece of Thomas he had left, a small metal tag he'd cut from the frozen harness. He placed it on the snow, whispering, "You're free now, brother. We're both free." But the wind didn't move. The air didn't shift. And when he looked up, he wasn't alone. A man stood across from him, dressed in that same blue downsuit, the one Adrian had found days ago. Frost clung to his eyelashes. His lips were cracked, skin ghost pale. "Thomas." "Thomas," Adrian breathed, his eyes filling. "I did it. I brought you back." His brother tilted his head. "You shouldn't have come here." Adrian laughed weakly, shaking his head. "I had to. I couldn't leave you. You left me before." The words hit like a knife. Adrian staggered. "That's not true." But Thomas's eyes narrowed. "You cut the rope." The memory slammed into him. The night of the storm 10 years ago. Two brothers tethered together, one slipping, the other holding the line. The wind howled, snow blinded them. The rope went tight, and Adrian had to choose. He'd screamed Thomas's name as the blade cut through the frozen cord. Watched his brother fall into the dark, swallowed by the storm. He had never told anyone. Adrian shook his head violently. No, it wasn't like that. You would have taken us both. But Thomas stepped closer. His voice was no longer human. It was the voice of the mountain. You took my life, and now you take my rest. The ground beneath Adrian cracked with a deep groan. The snow rippled outward like a heartbeat. The mountain trembled. He fell backward, gripping the ice axe, screaming, "Thomas, please! I came to make it right." "You can't make it right," the voice said. "You can only join me." And then the summit split open. Adrian plunged down into a whirl of snow and light, tumbling through memories, flashes of their childhood, their laughter, their first climb. And then silence. When he opened his eyes, he was back on the ridge, halfway down. The storm had cleared. The sun was rising. His oxygen gauge blinked green again. Everything felt wrong, too calm. He looked around. Dorja was there, alive, smiling faintly. "You made it, Mr. Blackwell. You did it." Adrian tried to speak, but no words came out. He reached for his radio. Dead. He reached for his gloves. Gone. His fingers were gray. Dorja said softly, "You can rest now." Adrian frowned. "Rest?" Dorja nodded toward the slope. Adrian followed his gaze and froze. There, half buried in the snow, was his own body, eyes open, lips blue, frozen mid-breath. Adrian staggered backward. No, this can't." The wind rose again, carrying voices, hundreds of them, whispering from the ice. "You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have stayed. Now you belong to the mountain." The last thing Adrian saw was his brother's silhouette standing over him, not angry, not sad, just still. Watching. Waiting. Then everything went white. 3 days later, the storm broke. From base camp, the mountain looked almost peaceful, sunlight glinting off her slopes as if she had forgiven the world. But Everest forgives no one. A rescue team of 4 climbers, led by Major Samir Khanna, a veteran of multiple recovery missions, began the ascent from Camp 3. Their task: locate Adrian Blackwell, missing for 72 hours, last seen near the summit. Khanna knew the odds. In this zone, 3 days might as well be 3 years. But Adrian wasn't just another climber. He was a legend back home, a man whose disappearance had already drawn cameras and questions. They had to bring something back, even if it wasn't him. As they climbed, Khanna felt the air grow heavier, as if something unseen pressed against their chests. His Sherpa muttered prayers, refusing to step over old fixed ropes that had frozen into the ice. They passed the Green Boots cave first. Khanna paused, as he always did, to nod silently toward the motionless body, a grim landmark on this deadly highway. But something new lay beside it, a fresh oxygen tank, gleaming silver, marked AB. "Blackwell," one of the climbers whispered. Khanna's jaw tightened. He made it this far. But no one said what they were all thinking. Then why didn't he come back? At 8,600 meters, the wind shifted. Through the white haze, a shape appeared, a tent, half collapsed, flapping weakly. They hurried toward it. Inside, they found a small notebook sealed in a plastic bag. The first page was covered in shaking handwriting. "If someone finds this, tell them I brought him home." Khanna frowned. "Him who?" Then one of the Sherpas cried out. Just outside the tent, sticking out of the ice, was a gloved hand. They dug carefully, revealing the body, or what was left of it. Blue downsuit, oxygen mask shattered. No rope, no pack. The face was frozen solid, but the eyes, open, watching. Khanna leaned closer and whispered, "Adrian Blackwell." But when he tried to close the man's eyes, something stopped him cold. There was no frost inside the pupils, no clouding. They looked alive. They radioed base camp. Body found. likely deceased, preparing for descent. But before they could move him, the wind howled suddenly, sharp and high-pitched like a scream. The tent flap tore open. One of the Sherpas stumbled backward, shouting in Nepali, "We cannot take him! The mountain won't allow it!" Kana turned. "He's dead, for God's sake!" The Sherpa shook his head violently. "Not dead! Look!" And they all saw it, Adrian's hand twitching in the snow. Just once. They froze, eyes wide. Then the body went still again. Kana crouched down, breath fogging the air. "Nerves," he muttered. "Just the cold." But inside, he felt a weight pressing on his chest. The same unease he felt years ago when he found another frozen climber who seemed to smile at him as they carried him down. He zipped the body bag halfway, sealing Adrian's face. "Let's move." But the mountain had other plans. Halfway down the ridge, the storm returned. Visibility dropped to nothing. Their rope line vanished. Then the voice came through Kana's radio, weak, distorted, crackling through static. "This is Adrian Blackwell. Do you copy?" Kana froze mid-step. "Who is this? Identify yourself." "I'm at the summit. I found him. I found Thomas." The voice cut out. One of the climbers dropped to his knees, muttering a prayer. "It can't be him. He's with us. Right here." Kana stared at the body bag. It wasn't moving now, but the zipper had shifted, open wider. He snapped his radio off and shouted over the wind, "Keep going, now!" They descended through the blizzard, dragging the sled behind them. The howling grew louder, not wind but whispers. Dozens of them. Names, pleas, fragments of old climbers' last words. By the time they reached Camp 4, one Sherpa was missing. At base camp, they laid Adrian's body on a stretcher. A doctor confirmed no pulse, no breath, no signs of life. The bag was sealed for transport. But Kana couldn't sleep that night. Something gnawed at him. He went to check the storage tent, just once more. Inside, the body bag was open. Adrian's face stared up at the ceiling, calm, eyes closed now, as if at peace. But the tag sewn into his jacket, the one that said A. Blackwell, was gone. In its place was another, old and cracked from years of frost, T. Blackwell. Kana stumbled back, breath caught in his throat. The wind outside howled, shaking the tent. He turned, and for a split second, in the doorway, he saw two silhouettes walking together up toward the mountain. Brothers. Then they were gone. When the weather finally cleared, Everest gleamed like a cathedral of ice. Silent, blinding, merciless. At base camp, Adrian Blackwell's body was scheduled to be flown back to England. News of his death spread fast. The headlines called him the man who vanished twice. But no one really knew what had happened during those final hours on the mountain. No one, except the few who had seen his notebook. Major Samir Kana sat alone in the mess tent that morning, staring at the pages he'd taken from Adrian's pack. The handwriting grew more chaotic with every line. "Thomas is here. I saw him in the storm. He's not angry, just waiting. If I make it down, I'll tell his family. But if I don't, we're together again." Kana closed the notebook slowly. He'd seen men lose their minds up there, hallucinations, hypoxia, frostbite. But something about these words didn't feel like madness. They felt like closure. He looked out the window. The mountain loomed above, vast and ancient, like it had swallowed centuries of grief and never once burped them back out. 3 days later, the helicopter arrived. The pilot, a cheerful Nepali named Dorje, handled countless retrievals. But even he shivered when he looked at the sealed body bag. "Feels strange," he muttered, like he's still watching. Kana forced a smile. "They all are." The helicopter lifted off, slicing through thin air. As it climbed higher, the shadow of Everest stretched long beneath them, swallowing the valley. Kana leaned toward the window, eyes narrowing. "Wait." At 8,000 meters, near the yellow band, two small figures moved slowly upward. Impossible. No one should be there. Not after the storm. "Dorje, can you circle back?" The pilot frowned. "There's nothing up there, sir." But Kana saw them clearly. Two climbers, side by side, heading for the summit. One wearing a red jacket, one blue. Both familiar, both impossible. He didn't say another word until they landed. That night, at base camp, Kana couldn't sleep. The wind kept shifting, rattling the tents, whispering through the cracks. When he finally stepped outside, the air was still, silent. Then he saw it, at the edge of camp, half buried in snow, a climbing tag, gleaming faintly under the moonlight. He bent down and picked it up. The name printed in faded ink, Thomas Blackwell, 2013 expedition. Kana's breath caught. Impossible. He turned it over. On the back, scratched into the metal by hand, were 4 simple words. "He brought me home." The next morning, before leaving for Kathmandu, Kana gave the notebook and the tag to the team's liaison officer. "Send these to Adrian's family," he said. The officer looked puzzled. "Are you sure? They'll have questions." Kana smiled faintly. "Let them. Sometimes answers don't belong here." As he walked away, the mountain glowed gold in the morning light. For a brief moment, he thought he saw 2 faint specks far above, where the sky met eternity, unmoving, side by side. Brothers. Together. At last. Subscribe to Ben's Stories for more real emotional Everest tales that reveal the truth behind the world's most dangerous mountain.